Plus, the Christmas morning text burned through my phone screen like acid. "You're banned from Christmas until you apologize, idiot." My coffee mug stayed frozen halfway to my lips as I read it again. The apartment suddenly felt arctic, not from December cold, but from the realization that they'd finally said what I'd suspected for years. I wasn't family. I was a walking ATM they'd grown tired of. My name is Madison. I'm 27 and a financial analyst. This is the story of how I made my family realize what they'd actually lost. The thing about being the family bank is that nobody teaches you how to quit. For 3 years, I'd been covering their emergencies. Dad's surgery when insurance stalled, Mom's car repair, the mortgage gap when Dad got laid off temporarily. Each time started with "just this once" and "we'll pay you back Friday." Friday became "next month," which became never mentioned again. But this Christmas ban wasn't about money. It was about Dylan, my golden child brother who'd borrowed my rent money twice this year and still hadn't paid it back. When I'd asked about it during Thanksgiving dinner, he'd laughed and called me the family budget cop. Everyone thought it was hilarious. Everyone except me. The group chat had been brutal. Christmas headcount discussions where my name simply vanished from the list. When I asked if they'd forgotten me, Dylan typed back, "Limited seating. Try New Year, if you behave." Not one person defended me. Not Mom, not Dad, not even Aunt Beatrice, who claimed to love me like her own daughter. That's when I realized this wasn't accidental exclusion. This was deliberate erasure. I called Mom immediately, hoping for some human explanation. Kitchen noise clattered behind her voice. Dishes, laughter, the sound of a family celebration I was funding but couldn't attend. "You're not invited until you apologize to Dylan," she said, her tone cold as policy. Apologize for what? Asking why he keeps borrowing money he never returns? Uncle Roger's voice cut through the background. "There she goes again. Budget cop." The entire room erupted in laughter. My chest tightened like a fist. "If you want less drama," I said carefully, "stop using my debit card for autopay." The line went dead. 10 minutes later, Aunt Beatrice texted, "Don't make this about money. Family comes first." Then she posted Christmas table photos with everyone tagged except me. The captions read, "Best family ever," while my autopay covered their mortgage. Christmas Day, I drove past their house. A foil-wrapped plate sat abandoned on the cold porch. My dinner. Even the neighbor's cat had more dignity than to touch it. I watched through my windshield as snow began covering the corners. They'd treated me like a delivery service, not a daughter. That's when something fundamental shifted inside me. I went home and opened my laptop. Banking apps, spreadsheets, 3 years of financial records. Every emergency payment, every autopay, every time I'd covered their gaps while Dylan posted Instagram photos from expensive restaurants. The numbers told a story they'd never wanted me to read aloud. My financial analyst training made compiling the documentation straightforward. I had access to all my own banking records and could cross-reference them with the payment confirmations I'd saved over the years. At the top of a fresh document, I typed, "What they don't know is about to save me." Monday morning, I called Angela, my friend who works in financial planning. We met at a quiet coffee shop where I slid a thick binder across the wooden table. Inside were printed screenshots, transfer logs, autopay histories, documented text conversations promising payment that never came. Angela's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. "Madison, you've been a safety net, not a daughter. Time to cut the net." She walked me through it step by step. How to revoke autopay authorizations, unlink my cards from their accounts, transfer the phone plan to my name only. Clean, legal, undeniable. "The beautiful thing," she said, "is you don't need their permission to stop paying their bills." That evening, I methodically went through each account. Mortgage autopay, revoked. Electric bill removed. Internet service transferred. Phone plan, my name only. Each click felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd forgotten existed. By Tuesday, my bank balance looked different. Foreign, almost. Money that stayed in my account instead of flowing automatically to theirs. The panic call came Thursday. "The mortgage didn't clear," Mom's voice cracked through the phone, thin with terror. "The bank called. They said—" "I'll come by," I interrupted calmly. and I'll bring documentation. The house felt colder when I walked in, despite the heating I'd been paying for. Mom sat rigid at the kitchen table, fingers knotted together. Dad slumped in his chair, eyes gray with exhaustion. I placed the binder between us on the polished wood. "This is private," I said quietly. "No audience." Dad nodded. Mom stayed silent. "We thought Dylan was helping financially," Dad whispered, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I turned the binder toward them. "This is who helped." Page after page of evidence, mortgage payments flowing directly from my account to their lender, grocery receipts, utility payments, prescription copays. 3 years of me being their invisible foundation. "You banned me from Christmas until I apologized," I said, my voice steady as stone. "So I stopped paying for the holiday you enjoyed without me." The front door slammed. Dylan walked in like he owned the air, then froze when he saw the binder. His confidence cracked instantly. "You're really doing this?" he asked, almost offended that I'd documented his promises. I slid a clear sleeve across the table. Inside were highlighted text messages. "I'll Venmo Friday. Just until next month. Family helps family. Dozens of promises. 0 payments." Dylan read silently, his jaw tightening. "You called me the budget cop," I continued, "but this is accountability. Every dollar I loaned you is here. Every Friday that never came." Mom finally found her voice. "We didn't realize how much you didn't want to realize," I cut in gently. "It was easier to pretend Dylan was your success story while I quietly covered the gaps." Dylan's composure snapped. "You can't just abandon them like this." I almost smiled. "I'm not abandoning them. I'm treating them like adults, which includes you." The room fell silent except for the refrigerator's hum. Nobody had arguments left. "I'm not asking for payback," I added, sliding a small paper toward Dad. "These are phone numbers for setting up your own autopay. I'm just done being your bank." Dad stared at the paper, then whispered, "What about New Year?" For the first time in years, I answered without guilt. "I'll see how I feel." I tucked the binder under my arm and walked out into the crystalline air. Each step felt like shedding weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it wasn't mine. Driving home, an old fear rose. What if they never speak to me again? What if this silence becomes permanent? At the red light, I breathed deep and realized something profound. I'd been afraid of their silence for years. Maybe silence was finally mercy. The family group chat flickered weakly over the next few days. "Who can handle the bills?" someone typed, then silence. No volunteers, no plan. The chat died the same way our relationship had, quietly, from neglect. Mom texted 2 days later. "I didn't realize how much you did. We'll figure it out." I read it twice, set my phone down, and didn't sprint to rescue anyone. My paycheck stayed in my account. The numbers breathed in a way they never had before. Dad called the following week, his voice careful. "We set up the autopay. And Madison, I'm sorry for making you feel like a purse instead of a daughter." Those words shook something loose inside me. They didn't fix everything, but they mattered. Mom invited me for dinner the next week. Nothing fancy, no conditions. Just pasta in a quiet kitchen. Her hug lasted 1 second longer than usual, a small but necessary second. Dylan texted once, "I'm sorry." I didn't reply immediately, but after a week of consideration, I sent back, "Sorry doesn't pay rent. Until you can have an adult conversation about the money you owe me, we have nothing to discuss." He never responded, and I realized that was my answer. Our relationship, built on his financial irresponsibility and my enabling, was finally over. A month later, Mom called about Easter plans. "We'd love to have you join us," she said carefully, "but I want you to know, if you're not ready, we understand. And Dylan won't be there. He's taking some time to figure things out." I realized this was their way of acknowledging what I'd needed all along, that my presence mattered more than keeping peace with my brother. "I'll bring dessert," I told her, and meant it. Later that week, I found myself at the bakery where Aunt Beatrice had once embarrassed me. The cashier smiled warmly. "What'll it be today?" "Everything bagel," I said, like anyone else would. The bagel tasted honest, simple, mine. I keep that binder on my shelf now, not as a threat, but as proof. proof of what I carried, proof of what I chose to put down. 6 months later, I can say with certainty, I'll spend next Christmas at their table, but on my terms. Dylan won't be there. Mom made it clear that until he addresses his financial irresponsibility, family gatherings will remain separate. Dad pays his own bills now, and Mom's hugs have stayed longer. I didn't lose my family that winter. I finally stopped losing myself. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.